What's the longest you've ever waited in line to buy something? When you think of this number, consider whether you waited in line to have the privilege to enter the store, if you waited in line for a fitting room or for an attendant to help you, or whether you waited in line to check out your items with a cashier. According to WaitWhile, Americans across the US spend approximately 37 billion hours each year waiting in line. Divided between a population of around 340 million people, that equates to roughly 108 hours or 4.5 days every year the average American spends waiting in line. A study released in 2022 by WaitWhile showed that the most frequent places people found themselves waiting in line were at retail stores, restaurants, and pharmacies. 2 out of 3 of these instances are related to consumerism. Today, I am going to talk about why standing in line for a good deal or for free things is rarely worth the effort. I'll discuss how the sunk cost fallacy encourages us to spend more when we wait in long lines. I'll talk about the hidden costs associated with waiting in lines, and also how the value of what we think we save when waiting for a good deal is rarely what it actually is. If you're new to the channel, I'm Carly, and I make videos on financial literacy and consumerism. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell if you're interested in these topics. Because of how dense a big city like New York is, it's not uncommon for me to see people standing in line for something every single week. Sometimes it's for the hottest restaurant, sometimes it's for a free event, sometimes it's for huge sales put on by really coveted brands, also known as sample sales. Sometimes people score genuine bargains waiting in line. But there is also a psychological phenomenon at play. Studies show that the longer you wait in line, the more you plan to spend. This is because people are mentally accounting for sunk costs, which are costs that have already occurred that you can't get back. I bet that 99% of people who stand in line for at least 45 minutes to shop will leave having purchased something, even if they wouldn't have bought any items if they hadn't been stuck waiting in a long line. That's where the sunk cost fallacy comes into play. It's so easy to think, I've been waiting 45 minutes or even 3 hours. I might as well buy more of these items that are being sold at a discount. And I can also imagine it almost feels like a failure to walk out of a store with nothing after having spent up to or even over half of a day dedicated to this endeavor. Honestly, I even recognize this in my buying habits. If I ever stand in line for a popular bakery, because that's what I would stand in line for, I might buy, or rather I have bought, more than one baked item. If I spent 30 minutes waiting in line, will I really come away with only one croissant? Because to me, it feels like such a waste to wait so long and only buy one thing. But in reality, if I hadn't stood in line, I would have walked away with only one item. Perhaps the more rational way to think about it is considering the line as part of the cost of buying the item. Speaking of costs, there are hidden costs that people might not think about when it comes to standing in line. Sometimes standing in line is not a big deal. Often you can do something with that time anyway, like read a book, listen to a podcast, or like plan your week. My gym happens to be right next to a sample sale location where popular brands will sell clothing at an extreme discount. I've seen people in line at 7 a.m. bundled up in 30-degree weather, waiting for a sale that starts at 10 a.m. I've also seen people waiting in line in direct sunlight in 90-degree weather. And neither of those scenarios are comfortable environments to be in. This also plays into the sunk cost fallacy, where when someone has been uncomfortable in line for 1+ hours, they are so much less likely to walk away precisely because they have already spent that time being uncomfortable. And outside of braving the elements, there are the hidden costs of parking fees, buying food while waiting, the discomfort of needing bathroom breaks. Also, even the annoyance from the waiting experience, especially when people cut the line. Not to mention, there's also the opportunity cost of what you could have done with your time instead, as well as the opportunity cost of how you could have spent your money. When we wait in line to spend money, that's time, money, and energy we could have spent on something else. I didn't consciously start thinking about how I valued my time until recent adulthood. Determining whether waiting in line is worth it or not varies per person. And one way to examine this is by determining what your time is worth to you. If you're working a salaried job, one starting point to determining the value of your time is how much you make per hour. Let's say I'm getting paid $20 an hour pre-tax, which is roughly the average American salary. So maybe I deem my time worth $20 an hour. But in reality, I should value my leisure time to be worth more. After all, leisure time is non-renewable, and and it's widely recognized as being worth more since overtime pay is 1.5 times a standard salary. So even in a salaried setting, your leisure time is worth 50% more. My leisure time in this scenario should be valued at $30 an hour. And let's say I spend an hour waiting in line to be one of the first people to shop a sale. Maybe I spend another 1.5 hours shopping at the sale, and because of the sunk cost fallacy, meaning I feel pressure to spend money because I already spent my time, I spend $100, and because of the sale, I saved $100. So it was like 50% off. If we add back in the cost of my leisure time, spending a total of 2.5 hours of my leisure time waiting in line and shopping was worth $75. So monetarily, instead of saving $100, I actually only saved $25. Furthermore, spending $100 was like spending over 5 hours of my time at work because I'm being paid $20 an hour pre-tax. In actuality though, that 5 hours is more like 6 to 8 hours since take-home pay is lower than $20 per hour because taxes get taken out. But for simplicity, we'll call it 5 hours. The time cost of shopping a sale was at least 2.5 hours of leisure time and 5 hours of paid time. Pretty much the equivalent of an 8-hour day to acquire my items and save $100 from the sale. Theoretically, the more money I make, the less economical sense it makes for me to stand in line. If my time is worth $500 an hour, does spending $1,000 worth of my time make sense to save $100? Maybe it does if I personally value that item to be worth over $1,000. Once I started looking at my time this way, it just didn't make sense to go through the subpar experience of waiting in excessive lines for a store to give me the privilege to buy from them. Sometimes I get that waiting in line is part of the experience, like at theme parks. Other times, waiting in line is just worth it because we know that we really want that item or experience. I think the problem comes when we consume things without thinking too deeply about why we want to consume them. And as a result, we mindlessly spend 1 to 3 hours waiting in line for something we think is worth it simply because we see so many other people want to experience the same thing. My personal average threshold for standing in line is about 10 to 20 minutes. I might give myself flexibility for up to 30 minutes depending on what I'm standing in line for. If I have to stand in line for more than 30 minutes, I'd rather not experience the attraction, or I'll come back another time when the hype has died down, or I'll make a reservation. I guess the other exception could be if I don't have to physically be in line. I set this threshold because I just don't want to feel scammed. Even if I spend no monetary value on whatever I'm standing in line for, I'm still spending time and energy. I don't want to waste my time only to experience something very mediocre. I have had enough of those experiences after waiting for a long period of time to deter me from waiting in lines in the future. As always, my goal in making this video is not to say stop shopping or never wait in line again. I'd like to encourage you to consider whether what you're looking to gain is worth the money, effort, and most importantly, the time it takes to acquire it. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Speaking of lines, one thing many people have waited in line for over the past year is Labubus. Check out this video where I examine the factors that led to the popularity of Labubus, from the hype to the psychology of blind boxes.